Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brett Campbell Show. I am Brett Campbell, and in today's episode, I have I'd like to say a return guest, but he's not a return guest on this actual podcast. I had him on Klaxon Cast, another podcast show that we produce, and his name is Brandon Dawson. Brandon Dawson is actually one of our highest rated podcasts that we've had on Klaxon Cast. So if you haven't listened to that, make sure once you've finished this one, head on over and listen to that, because this conversation was very different. In the Klaxon Cast episode, what's this, Brett? Am I doing an intro for Klaxon Cast or this one? Anyhow, I'm gonna feed your desire to go and listen to Klaxon Cast as well. But we talk about how Brandon actually, built and sold one of his businesses for $150 million, which is a really cool story within itself. But in this conversation, I got into the mind a little bit more of Brendan, and you'll quickly start to see why this guy's successful. He's business partners with Grant Cardone, who we also had on a Klaxon Cast episode. He's business partners in Cardone Ventures. And Brandon really, if I had to sum up Brandon in a word, he's a businessman. He's very intelligent in the way that he looks at business, and you'll see why throughout this episode. We talk about a number of things, how he trains himself for chaos. Obviously, as of recording this particular episode, we're still going through this thing called COVID. Unbelievably crazy what's happening right now out in the economy. And I asked Brandon, I said, how do you deal with it? What was your thoughts when this was sort of starting to eventuate into the economy? And he talked his way on how he thinks through it. We looked at his 6 core values that help him grow his business and navigate on how to deal with employees. We talked about why it is so important, and this was one of my biggest takeaways and reiterations of being able to take personal responsibility and acknowledge that your business right now is your problem with where you're at with it. So a bit of cold cup of tea there for some people, right? You got to take it on the chin and realize, because that's what's holding most business owners back from successes themselves. We talk about why most solopreneurs are moving away from something rather than moving into something, which is a paradigm shift for many. We talked about there's 30 million business owners in America, and 25 million of those are actually a solopreneur. We talk about Brandon's baseline principles, how he systematized steps for growing a business. We also looked at the biggest obstacles that most entrepreneurs face when their business gets to that sort of $3 million mark. And he shared his 3-step framework, the 3 M's, which is model, mimic, and master. And I really like that one. So highly recommend you tune into today's episode. Take some notes if you take notes. Before you do transition on in, though, make sure that you do head over to iTunes or wherever you're listening to this, and make sure you hit that review button or the review stars or review whatever option they have there for you to review the show. Please do that. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, take a screenshot of you listening to this on your mobile phone, because that's how most people listen to these things these days. But if you're on a laptop, I want a photo of that, because that's quite rare. You're a rare specimen if that's the case. But anyhow, I want to know you're listening to it. So head over to Instagram, upload it to your stories, tag me at Brett Campbell Official, and tag at Brandon Dawson. So make sure you tag both of us. We'll share it with our audience as well, and we'll just know that you're listening into the episode. So there you go. That's enough from me. This episode is far better than the intro that I've just presented to you. So without further ado, let's go check it out. Episode number, got no idea actually what number this is. We've done a lot, but it's a good one. Check it out. Brandon Dawson coming right at you. I'll tell you what, you're 99.997% better than any podcast guest that generally turns up these days, right? I just did an Instagram story. I just tagged you in it, and it's about how to actually just show up to a podcast to start with, right? It's amazing how people don't take the effort, especially when there can be, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who end up watching.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for, the whole world of podcasting's changed, though. I remember when Will wanted me to get into podcasting, I'm like, oh, we need a studio, we need the microphone. Everybody's now calls podcasting Zoom calls,
Yeah.
It's just because people didn't have studios at home and they couldn't get together. So the degradation in podcasting has significantly been impacted.
It has. I mean, pre-COVID, We've built an entire studio here, so my intention is every podcast that we can possibly do, a little bit harder with international guests, but to do it live, do it in person, sit here, jam, vibe off each other's energy and so forth. But
I know it definitely changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, but it makes it a lot easier when, I've got a nice 27-inch screen in front of me that all I can see is you you know what I mean? Like I almost feel like we're sort of in the same room. But mate, we've officially started. I appreciate you coming back for a second round. We last did our first podcast December, I think it was. So this was pre the world turning upside down. We've been going through some crazy things. It was actually pre you getting your jet as well. So, mate, I wanted to congratulate you on that one. I remember we were talking about in the first podcast, and mate, I've seen you whipping around America almost every day. How many? Obviously, it's been different with COVID, but how frequent are you traveling?
Every week.
Every week, and that's to deliver events to.
It's my job is vast, right? So we do 360 events where we're doing teaching business owners the gaps in their businesses and then putting strategies together with them. I do live speaking events as a featured speaker. I coach CEOs and entrepreneurs. So I get asked to go to private meetings with people that are struggling with things that I need to go to. And sometimes it's on a one-on-one basis. I've got some clients that have $500,000 billion-dollar companies, and they've got families involved, and they need good counsel and solid wisdom and strategy. So when you take my private clients, when you take the programs, we have the scale up program, we have the boot camps, those all got pushed off. We have the 10X 360 programs. We have the platform delivery programs where we had like 15 business owners in Arizona for 2 days with my team going through all the business, all the discoveries and the strategies to execute. I've got partners we're bringing on right now. There'll be a slew of announcements over the next 6 months about partners that we're strategically partnering Cardone Ventures with. Got a couple acquisitions going on right now, and I'm still the CEO of the company I sold.
Mate, so
when you put all that together, there's always a reason to be somewhere. And I usually need to take different teams of people with me. So I just couldn't do it if I wasn't flying private, and I couldn't take the people with me because we usually do the pre-brief and the debrief on the way in and on the way out.
Yeah, mate,
which keeps us moving to the next thing.
Makes absolute sense. I'm always intrigued. I wanted to ask you last time, I don't think I did, but what out of all the things, because, being an entrepreneur, there's never just one thing that you do. You're doing multiple things right there, coaching CEOs, working with smaller business owners, partnering with businesses, etc. What do you enjoy the most? What gives you the most? If you had to do that one thing, what is it that you get the most from?
And I didn't throw in there I buy real estate and build things too. So, I think it's
drive nice cars, and you like your cars. You got some nice treats there, let's call it. But mate, what is it that I'm interested to get into the mind of you almost, what is it?
I think the challenge, the different, so what I love, I'm very competitive and I love being tested. So people take things very personal and they respond emotional, and all that clouds their judgment. I look at it like every situation's like a chess game. How far out can you see the moves? How do you teach somebody to make the right moves and do the right kind of thinking about where to be and how to be? Or like people who are great at playing cards. I'm not a great chess player. People who are great at playing cards and counting, being able to count like in poker, knowing what the probability of every hand is. And, just the complexity of situations and fixing them. I think for me, the art of the deal, structuring it right on the way in, deconstructing it on the way out. It's always different issues across the spectrum of everything I get to do. And as long as I enjoy the people and believe that they're ethical and they're honest and they have the right intentions, I'm a roll up your sleeve and get into the mess with them. And I think that's what I like, because it's always a different fire. Like people are like, Brandon, we're in a crisis. I put out the emergency business response at the beginning of COVID. And people are like, how'd you know to do this stuff? I said, because every business every day is in crisis. If you don't recognize that.
It's just highlighted now.
What's that?
It's just been highlighted.
Yeah. I mean, all that's happening right now is the fact you didn't understand that in the first place and didn't have the right elements in place. So I just love the fact that I'm a wartime. If I could pick my job, what I think I'd love to be like a wartime field surgeon. You know, like everything's life and death. You're getting shot at. People are throwing stuff at you. People are screaming for help, and you got to prioritize every second of the day and every move you make, along with all the danger you're encountering. That's kind of what I am to business owners or high performance people.
I was talking about this yesterday, actually, on another podcast, and when I get asked the question around, what is it that I enjoy doing most out of all of the different things that I've got my claws into, it comes back to me to solving problems. And I think that comes back to me being, that's sort of an innate thing that I've always gravitated to, even as a kid. I jokingly say, but my mother just tells me stories of how when I was a kid, I'd create problems so I could solve them. I'd be the kid with the screwdriver, 4 or 5 years old, screwing the door hinges off so I can just screw them back in, right? and I find this with a lot of my entrepreneurial friends is that we just love to solve problems, right? And the bigger the problem, the more pressure around the problem, the better we seem to perform, right? So I love playing golf, right? And I know you love playing golf too. I play better when there's a lot of people watching me because I put myself under a certain level of pressure, right, to perform. What do you think from your own perspective? Because, you're saying there you want to be a wartime bloody battle surgeon and that everything firing at you, and that's where you sort of why do you feel you operate best at that level?
Because my experience and the ability to make calculated decisions and technical movements and
is that your ability to make decisions quickly where 9 times out of 10, if you make the decision quickly, it'll be the right decision versus if you've got an extended periods of time, you might start overthinking it?
I think you just get into, it's like when you do things at a high level of intensity, like the person that makes 1 sales call a day is never going to be as good as the person that makes 100. If the person that makes the 100 is always assessing the one little thing they did differently at each point in time to get better. There's plenty of people that will be as poor making 100 calls as the one making 1, that's for sure. But if you're after incremental improvement, if you're after increased impact, and so you're very conscious and aware of what you're doing, how you're doing it, what the result was, what the modifications were, what the greater impact was, that algorithm, while you're going about it, the more you do, the more you learn certain things you don't need to do. It's like Grant saying, never argue with the client or the customer. Like, why fight? Pick a fight, and you watch people do it all day long. Someone will come in and say, I love the color of that car. And if I'm selling the car and I go, well, actually, I disagree. I like the blue one better. Like, what causes a person to feel the need to do that? And just like business owners reacting to things around them that they're quite honestly responsible for creating, but they're blaming somebody else. Like, as soon as you see it, you know already what the issue is. So for me, fixing things, to your point, fixing things and then watching what happens when the success starts to happen and all the lives it changes is very exciting. And the more you do it, the more you calibrate your response to things. And so, I have hundreds and hundreds of business owners who have stated that in the last 5 months, we saved them from going out of business.
Let's talk about that, because it's been a crazy time, right? We're recording this. I don't even know what month it is. What is it? We've just gone into August. Wow, look at that. So we're almost to the tail end of the year. But we as business owners ourselves, our business here, Claxon, so we look after other businesses, right? So we grow and scale businesses using, digital growth strategies, paid advertising, et cetera, right? So we're responsible for helping grow other businesses, as are you, right? From your coaching, the mentoring, and all the other offerings that you guys have. But there's also your own business, right? You also got to grow your own business. How were you thinking as a business owner, first and foremost, when this whole COVID mess started to trickle down? And I mean, you've had a different experience because you're over in America, we're here in Australia, but the world's been shook, right? So what was your sort of that first week when this started to unravel? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, so I wrote this. So any of your viewers that want to go to cardoneventures.com/emergency, they can download my ebook. But I have a process I go through in real time, no matter what's happening. And the first thing, when something jolting or catastrophic happens, like me slamming against a curb in the middle of the night and blowing my wheels out and then gaining control of the car and pulling over, I don't start screaming and yelling and crying. The first assessment is, am I okay? Because if I'm okay, then I can go to the next step, which is, are the people I love, are they okay? If I can say the people I love are okay, then I go to the next step, which is, are the people I'm responsible and accountable for helping, are they okay? And if they're okay, then the final question is, how much time do I have? The more time I have, if it's 1 minute, if it's catastrophic and it's 1 minute because a car accident or the phone call that says somebody's in the hospital and you need to get there, like that goes straight to reactive mindset. Just boom, you just do what you got to do. And the more trained you are for that, the better your outcome. But the more time you put, if I have a day or a week or a month, then I'm going to default to, what is the outcome I want? What are the actions I need to put in place? Who do I need to make sure is aligned? Like I can go through this process that is natural for me. And that's what I did. And so the consequence was, first thing I did is make sure my kids and everybody were okay. Make sure my little brother who got laid off had a strategy and a plan that I could assist him in, and make sure he was in a safe place. One of my little brothers. Then the next thing was, and my kids were all good. And then the next thing was Natalie's family. They're all good. Then we called every one of our clients within 36 hours of, we know all these things have been canceled. We know everything's been froze. We know people are scared. What can we do starting right now to make sure that we can support and help you? And a lot of people are like, we don't know what to do. We don't know what we should do with our employees. We don't have enough money to stay in business. We are paying lease and rent and have all these expenses for things we can't even go in and open. Like just hundreds of questions. And what we did is we went into, what is the fastest way I can field every question and deliver the response? And I did that for a couple of weeks. Then I'm like, we went back and said, what are all the same questions we're getting asked? And I wrote the ebook and I put it out and I said, these things you need to do, and it goes in sequence. And if none of this stuff's happening, go to page 8. And if none of that's happening, go to page 9. And then I was advising and helping people. So I went to that mode. So I go to, what can I control? Control the controllable. What can I control right this minute? I can't control what's going to happen in a year. I can't control what's going to happen in 9 months. I can only control. So then I go through my safety checks. How much a month am I burning with my payroll?
Yeah.
What expenses do I have that are variable that I can shut them off right now, like travel and everything else? What are my fixed expenses that are negotiable? What can I negotiate on, like rent and things, if we're all in a bad situation together? What revenues am I going to lose? What can I do to mitigate the loss of those revenues and still provide services and deliverables to the people who really need it? So you go through these, like I'll do that instantly and start concluding, and then we move through it. So the very first thought I had was, all these growth purchases and commitments that we were in the middle of right after GrowthCon. How are we going to deliver those?
Just to give context to that.
People need it more now than they needed it before they went to GrowthCon.
Just to give context to GrowthCon for those who don't know it. So how many people were at the latest GrowthCon? So this was February. You had a massive event in Las Vegas. Was it 10,000? 13,000 people. I was partly, because I've got a lot of friends who are running events, had people who had, 5,000, 10,000 people scheduled to turn up to events, and then they obviously got canned because, we have to socially distance. But it was perfect timing, if you can call it that, obviously the event was able to be had, but you hit a really big point there is, you would have done a lot of revenue on the back end of that and generated a lot of new clients. And it can be easy for people just to, it's just too tough, I'm not going to continue on, which is, I think, a duty of care, for businesses who are offering products and services. And mate, your way of thinking there was so uncannily similar to how I thought through the initial instance, right? And it's something I want to circle back to, which I think is the most important component there. And you said, if you're trained, right? And this is what I feel most business owners, entrepreneurs are not equipped with, is the reason why when a problem arises, that we can literally go from, okay, let's think through this formula now, or let's go through these steps, is because it's not the first time this has ever happened, right? It's you literally pointed it out right there. If you go and crash your car into the curb, right, you're going to think through the same framework, right? Everything in life is a strategy. And mate, to be able to go through that strategy in that specific order, especially because there was a time, and I'd like to get your thoughts. I probably had about a 24-hour period where I was like, oof, this could be something this could be the biggest problem that I'm yet to try and solve, right? This is probably the biggest problem that I'm going to be faced with here. And I had a little bit of moment of sort of an uncertainty there, but then kicking back into a framework that I had instilled as a habit, right? So I want to ask, what's your thoughts, or what's your ways of training or sharing with business owners how they can create these type of habits, so when chaos does occur, they can start thinking their way through it instead of panicking?
Yeah. So I teach business owners that the only way to do that is through visualization, because I role play. I'm a role player, so I role play scenarios because I do so many negotiations. Things can go south, and you put two negotiators in a room, and somebody takes a sharp crack at the other one, and the other one takes a crack back. You already know the deal's not going to get done. So you have to prepare yourself not to accept and receive the cracks, and then you got to prepare yourself not to give and be responsible for delivering the cracks on people. Same with sales. Like if I'm trying to sell something, I have to be prepared for your objections or things that would cause you not to want to do business with me. So this is why Cardone U programs so many people to be successful, and why Grant is so impactful with what he's been doing all these years. But the same is true for all aspects. The more equipped and prepared you are, because you role played it, you expect it, therefore you don't react. And then with the action that you do take is representative of the direction you want to go. That's a decision. That's a choice you have to make as a human being. And the more you can visualize those moments and then your reactions to those moments, and this is what I've been teaching business owners for years, because a lot of them, let's just use some interesting statistics. There are 31.5 million businesses in the United States, so we're just talking about the United States here, that are considered small to mid-sized businesses. 25 million of the 31.5 million have a single employee, which is the founder. So if you want to know what the first break point is to a business, it's learning to be able to find, develop, and align other people to help you with whatever you're trying to do. And most people, majority of the people, cannot figure even that one thing out. Then there's 5.5 million businesses between 2 and 15 employees. So some people have been able to figure out how to get some people to come along and help them, and the businesses have grown. But now it becomes real talent to go from 15 to hundreds of employees or thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And the foundational elements of all that are usually put in place at the beginning. So the stats show exactly why businesses aren't growing and scaling and what they're struggling with. And then the three chief complaints for why 2/3 of those businesses fail within the first 5 years is complaint number one, no demand for their product or services. Number two, couldn't get financing. And number three, couldn't hire any good people to help them build the business. So therefore it failed. Now, all three of those chief complaints for failure, if you recognize, none of those accepted responsibility. So the fact is I couldn't sell. I'm going to nail it down, and Grant's an expert. The reason the businesses fail is they couldn't sell, because let's use logic. What moron would start a business and throw all their money into it if there was no supply, no demand at all? Like, you had to have had an indicator that there was demand, or like, if you can't produce that, how are you going to hire anybody to come want to do it with you? And who is going to give you money if you can't do it by yourself? So the first break point in business is 0 to 3 million. If you can't get there, you're not going to go from 3 to 8. That requires bringing other people around you to help you, and systematizing is 8 to 15. So to answer your question, when things go awry, it's really easy to understand why. And for me, I'm assessing those break points, and then I'm assessing them for myself too. I'm reverse engineering my own business to understand where we're going, how we're going to get there, and what our risks are.
What's been the biggest conversation you've had lately? Or when I say the biggest, I mean the most consistent conversation that you've been having lately with all, your students. What's the consistent narrative that's happening right now for you?
Yeah, well, so with business owners, it's because, to your point about how did I know what to do in the training, it's not second. It just doesn't come to you. I mean, it's through years and years and years of scenario-based training. Just like if my buddy, who's a lieutenant commander, U.S. Navy SEAL, threw a water tank on me and made me go to the bottom of the ocean and, disconnected it from me and said, do something, I'd drown. Like, I don't know what I would do. I'd panic. I'd freak out. Well, the same for people that don't know what to do with the complexity of business. So it is what it is. So accepting that, first thing is acceptance. And that's, you asked me, what's the number one thing? It's getting people to accept where they're at. Because once you accept where you're at, you can now have contrast and context to where you want to be. But if you're panicking, you're no good to anybody, including yourself, and you're compounding the situation.
Yeah, I've been having a very similar conversation where I believe that this entire situation that's happened, has been an ultimate reset for a lot of businesses. Right. And when I say businesses, I'm also talking even solopreneurs, right? That 25 million people who are a business of one, which, basically they've gotten themselves a stressful job, not a business, right? That I believe that when things like this happen, it's given some businesses the opportunity to go, you know what? Here's some time to have a think about this. Do you even want to be in the business or the industry or selling the products or services that you are currently operating within? 2, should you be actually doing that, right? Should you still continue down this particular path that you're going down? Well, the other alternative is, now is probably the opportunity where you need to know where you sit inside your organization. Maybe you're cut out to be a CEO. Maybe you're just the marketing person inside your own business. Maybe you're the sales director inside your business, or maybe you're just the visionary and you need to find people in accordance to help build and grow the entire business for you. I feel that, and what you guys do with Cardone Ventures, obviously, is you partner with businesses, right? So you provide them with that extra. Similarly, how we partner with businesses and we're an extension of their marketing team, right? So instead of someone sitting there trying to do their own marketing, or they're trying to build their own internal marketing team, they can literally have us as an entire company sort of bolt on, and you've got it there instantly made. So it's this continuation of the business owners needing to change their mind. You hit the nail on the head with acceptance. So they need to accept where they are, but they also need to be real with where they should move towards, right? And not use this as a, oh, well, I'll just go back to doing what I was doing and hopefully it'll work this time around, right? It's the ultimate reset to be able to start thinking differently about where they're moving with their business. What's your thoughts around what business owners, once they've created that level of acceptance, okay, yep, this is my bad. I've been fucking up here. I've been doing this wrong. What's your advice for them to get back on the track again?
Yeah, well, so where there's a lack of commitment, there will be a lack of results, and so the acceptance is taking responsibility for why they're not where they want to be. There is and then if you accept that, then you have to ask the question. The first sign of getting help is acknowledging you have a problem. Instead of blaming everybody else and deferring and deflecting and saying there's no demand for my product, I can't find good people, I don't have any money, accept the fact that you don't know what you're doing. Like the what you do needs to work. And if you don't know how to make the what you do work, you're not going to get any of those other things to help you make it work. Then once you get the what you do to work, you have to accept the fact that it's now beyond the what you do, it's who you do it with and how you do it that's going to make the difference. So those are different skill sets. Now you can be a victim of all that, but if you're committed to whatever your impact is, you have to accept the fact that those are realities and those are not your areas of expertise. And you need to seek the right kind of guidance, the right kind of assistance. But what I find with most business owners is they've made so many poor decisions. They don't even trust themselves in making a good decision of who to follow and trust. So that comes out with, well, I don't know. Yes, I want this result, but I don't know that I want to hire you, because people can hire us and come to our programs. And when I'm like, I just spent 20 minutes with you and I asked you 3 specific questions of which you answered on a scale of 1 to 10. Yes, I want to do this. Yes, I want to do that. And yes, I want to do this. Then you asked me 3 to 5 questions. I answered you. And now I've told you, yes, you can do this. Yes, you can do this. And yes, you can do that. In a lot of cases, I pointed you to 1, 2, or 3 people in your industry that have done that, and we work with them. So now you have context and contrast, and you still can't make a decision to say yes. That's not because of me. That's because you've lost your confidence in you, either in your decision making or your commitment to act on anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. And if you're not going to be trapped as one person of one, you have to accept that. And that's the real acceptance, is I have a goal or a dream, but I am not really committed to it. If you accept that and then you say, but now who can I get help from? Then you have to learn the process of finding the right mentors, drafting behind them, and doing the work necessary with the courage necessary to get the result that you say you want. And that's what I do with business owners because look, the fact that times are tough, I don't make them assess if they're in the right place or doing the right thing. I make them assess, are you truly committed or not? If the answer is yes, then none of that shit matters. The only thing that matters is how do you move from here to where you're going to be? And what do you need to do differently that you were unwilling to do in the past? Who are you going to model, mimic, and master behind? Who's the one? So, when people tell you, oh yeah, I'm struggling, I say, who's the one person you modeled after? What did you do to mimic what they did? And how did you master it? Take a piece of paper right now. You say you want to create a $5 or $10 million something. Here's a piece of paper. What's the name of the person? What did you learn from them? How did you act on it? What was the result? And that right there crushes their whole case, because they're like, I don't have that person. Well, of course you don't have it. You want to be that person, but you don't know what you're doing. So accept the fact that your dream's bigger than your actions.
Yeah.
And when you accept that, then ask yourself a question. Is there a bigger, better, more impactful way to do what I'm doing? And am I committed to learning how to do that? Or do I want to sit here and be an ego person that blames everybody else for why I can't succeed? And I refuse to work with people who can't accept that they are in themselves the problem.
Yeah.
Because if they haven't mastered the thing they're doing, if they haven't mastered connecting with other people and bringing those people in and giving them passion about what they can do together, and if they haven't mastered finding people that can help them and support them, then they're not committed to the deal. They're happy being small.
I remember we talked about this last time, and I think this is the pandemic inside the entrepreneurial world, is that I personally feel that the majority of people who are calling themselves entrepreneurs or even business owners shouldn't be that. They could be the best number 2 in a company or a number 3 and have a happier life, doing the tasks that they're trying to do inside their own business, but being a part of a company that's actually wanting to grow, and it has founders and leaders in the company that are wanting to actually grow the business, because there's got to be something as to why so many people are fearful to take that step, right? Because what you just said there, that entire piece was absolutely 100% spot on. And when you hear it, it's like, well, that just makes absolute sense. Of course. People do say, yes, I want this, I want this, I want this. And you're like, well, here's how you can do it. Here's the door. And they don't want to walk through it. Why do you think so many business owners, we'll talk solopreneurs here, that 25 million people, why don't they want to walk through the door? Do you feel they're putting up a fake facade of trying to be someone that they're not?
I can tell you, this is just my years of experience and the work I've done on myself. Those people are moving away from something, not moving towards something.
They're escaping. Maybe it was an old job, or maybe it was something, or maybe they're trying to prove themselves to someone or something.
Or maybe they don't want anybody telling them what to do, or maybe they don't like having a boss, or maybe they don't like this, or I want to work for myself because I'll never have anybody tell me what blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But what they're not really doing is moving to something. Because if you're moving to something, then you have to acknowledge, to grow into something, I got to grow.
Yeah.
You can't be ignorant and stay small and say you're moving into something. That's a contrast. So those people are moving away. And when you interview them, and I've interviewed thousands and thousands and thousands of business owners at every size, from startup to $7 or $8 billion. And when I ask the question, why did you start, or why do you own a business? The moment, so it's an intuitive thing and it happens instantly and they don't even know they're doing it. Well, and Michael Gerber talks about an E-Myth. 70% of all businesses were started by technicians who worked somewhere else and made a move because they wanted to be their own boss. They had that entrepreneurial seizure.
Yep.
So this has been well documented across a multitude of writings and authors over the last 50 years. And even before that with Napoleon Hill and all this stuff. When you're moving away from something, your mindset is not expansion. It's the opposite. Yeah. What is the opposite of expansion?
Retraction.
Containment. What are they containing? They're containing not wanting to have a boss. They're containing wanting to be in total control of their time. They're containing anybody telling them what to do. They're containing being obligated or responsible. Well, that mindset will not build you a business where there's employees, because you can't ask other people to do what you're unwilling to do yourself. So it goes back to acceptance and commitment. If they're unwilling to do that, they will stay small and be the primary statistic, which, by the way, it's an interesting thing. Gallup poll out of 100 million Americans said that 28% were actively engaged, 30 some odd percent were disengaged, and the balance of them were actively disengaged, which they're sabotaging the business. So look at those stats. Like you look at the number of business owners that work by themselves, and you look at the number of people that are sabotaging businesses. If you're one of those people and you're like, screw this, I'm going to go work for myself, and you start your business, you've already imprinted in your mindset that employees just take from you and sabotage you. Yeah. And therefore, I won't have anybody that's going to do that. I'll only have people who are this, and this. But because you weren't that person, so what I tell people is, hey, if you're an entrepreneur working for somebody, you better be fully locked, loaded, and committed, because if you ever have any hopes of leaving that, doing anything big, you have to program your mind of what that characteristic looks like, so you learn how to bring that into your organization. But if you go and drain off the company and sit at the water cooler and pout and be, shitty about it and talk about leadership that doesn't know anything, I'm going to go do my own thing. That person already is destined for failure, because they never learned what an actively engaged, fully aligned, fully inspired, and people are like, yeah, but you don't know, they don't treat me good at work. Well, I didn't say you shouldn't leave. I said, when you're there on somebody else's payroll, exhibit the behaviors of what you'd want to model and mimic and master in your own organization, or you're going to be screwed. I think the TV reset on us.
That's all good.
And so people create their own disasters and then they're victims of it.
And it's that almost level of entitlement that some people can exude, as though, they're entitled to a job, right? Like no one's entitled to any job. As business owners, the entrepreneurs, they are essentially the ones who are putting the initial risk out there of having a go at something. And I think that, one thing that we've worked on really heavily is getting the buy-in from everyone inside our organization that we're all building this together. You're not building my business, you're building your own business inside this business, and where it's that. And I know you talked about this when you sold your previous business. You had some really good things that you did there with your team, and made them feel a part of those like their own business, right? Which I think is super important. And the inception of social media has made entrepreneurship exciting and sexy, and like it's the cool thing to go and do, and you should start your own business. And now with COVID happening, this whole work from home, everyone can work from home and you can start your own at-home business. Unfortunately, it's just not that easy. Right, it's just not that easy to do that, mate. I want to ask you, when you're working with your students, and let's say someone comes into the business, you do an autopsy of figuring out where they're at. What are generally, do you think, what are the 1 to 2 first initial things that most business owners across the board need to get dialed in first? Like, what are the first couple of focuses outside of taking, their own personal responsibility and so forth, but at a business level?
Well, it depends on if they're in the category of I work by myself, I have 2 to 15 employees, or I have 1,000 employees, because those are going to require different interventions. But the first thing is I have six core values personally and in all my businesses. First one's inspiration. Second one is discipline. Third is accountability. Fourth is transparency. Fifth is alignment. And sixth, the most important, is results. So when people aren't actively communicating about those 6 things, this is my own personal algorithm, then that's the problem. So if you're going into work and you're telling your employees, oh gosh, this COVID thing, man, I don't know if we're going to make it. I don't know. I'm so freaked out. I stayed up awake. All I'm doing is injecting into my own environment the distraction that's pulling my team away. And some people say, but Brandon, you got to be able to express yourself. No, you don't. Like, you can do that at home. You can do that with your counselor. But when your people show up to work, or when your customers come in, they expect somebody to be in charge. And being in charge says, here's where we're going. Here's what we're doing. Here's what needs to get done. Here's how we view it. Just like I talked to a restaurant person I've been coaching, and she's been getting some criticism from her team because every once in a while she'll take her mask off to talk to them, or she had to go to Tennessee for a family thing, came back, and they started criticizing her. Like, what happens if you get us all sick? I said, why are they talking about that? Is anybody sick? No. Does everybody get their temperature checks every day? Yes. Are they adults? Yes. Do you wash your hands? Yes. Do you wear face masks 99% of the time? Yes. Does the restaurant go out of its way to protect its customers by making sure everything's cleaned and yes. Okay, why are you having this conversation with me? Why aren't you on the phone getting another customer in so we can sell them some pizza and some pasta and make their experience remarkable, and give an environment where they don't feel they have to listen to the same crap they're hearing everywhere else because you're not talking about. Like you need to tell your employees, in this house, when you come in here, as long as these 5 safety checks are being done and we don't have a problem, I don't want to hear one word about it here. All I want to hear is how you're created an experience for our customers to blow their minds and give them a peace of mind that we're safe, we're customer centric, we're going to have the best food because they're probably dying to get out and get in a restaurant and eat. Like, you need to point your people to specific success. And the drainers that want to Oh my God, the sky's falling. Look, is your temperature okay? I'm going to go through my safety checks. Is your temperature okay? Yes. So you don't think you have it? No, but I'm scared. Okay. Is your temperature okay? Yes. Are your coworkers checking their temperature? Yes. Does anybody have it? No. Okay. So stop talking about it. Secondly, are you wearing your mask? Go through the protocols. These are the protocols. If this is happening, it's the best we can do. And every single ounce of energy now is how we build the business, saving the business, and providing value for the people we serve, because I'm not listening to anything else. And the minute somebody does that, send their ass home and tell them you're going to get a server in that wants to make some money by taking care of the customers and creating a great experience. So how you engage and how intentional you are and how specific you are will dictate the outcomes. And the outcomes will follow your commitment to whatever you're doing. Low commitment, low outcomes, and victimization. High commitment, high outcomes, and expectations. And if you just live by that and be the example of that and don't play into it, most business owners bring that into their business. They treat everybody like their family and friends and listen to all their horror stories or concerns. It's like, okay, great. I appreciate that's where you're at, but here's our checklist. Are you okay? Are we okay? Are the people we're serving okay? How much time do we have? Get your ass to work. Like, you got to run it that way, because otherwise they will claw you back to mediocrity. And I'm not saying be insensitive by any means. Every person that works for me at Cardone Ventures, we had 11 employees going into COVID. We were in the first 9 months of startup. I had already reserved, following my methodology of how to appropriately build a business, I had already reserved 9 months of operating capital. I didn't put any money into this business. Grant didn't put any money. I built this the same way I built Audigy. I didn't put any money into Audigy. I started it with $500,000, paid myself back in 18 months, and I never put money in, never borrowed money, and never raised capital. Generated $50 million of profits, always had 12 months of capital for operating reserves. And then I could forward invest the rest of the money into anything and everything I wanted to build. And then I sold the business for 77 times EBITDA, $150 million with zero debt on the books. Why? Because I have an algorithmic, disciplined approach at building the business, because I live with my 6 words.
So let me ask you this, that you said there was 9 months, you had cash flow for 9 months, which most people go, geez, well, most businesses won't even have cash flow for a week, right?
Well, how did you do that when your business was only 9 months old?
Well, most businesses operate on a week-to-week basis, right? They're struggling.
I was only 9 months, and I had accumulated 9 months.
Absolutely. So my question to you then is, whilst 9 months is amazing and would be perfect for a lot of businesses, what is that? You said the algorithm in your mind of, what's your suggestion to businesses? Because I hope now a lot more businesses are going to be a lot more forward thinking with this and go, maybe we need to keep some cash reserves and not just use all of that for scale, right? Because you can get caught in this perpetual startup cycle where every dollar you earn, you put straight back into scaling, that you are not protecting your baseline. Right. What's your baseline principles around that? I know how long's a piece of string, but
so the first break point is 0 to 3 million. So when do you go through the first break point, which is accumulating other people, is when you have enough that you can be in business for a year, which forces you to create a product or a service that's profitable, that you can reserve the cash and pay yourself to survive. When you have a year's worth of compensation, you hire your next couple employees. That year just went to 6 months. So what happens is, now as you're hiring people and you're growing your business model, mimic and master with your team, you've always got 6 months of reserve. But as you hire and scale, because you set up a year, now it's down to 6 months, it'll go down to 90 days. So goal one is always have 90 days in the startup period of capital after you hire your first round of assets. Then systematically with that first round of assets, build up 6 months worth of operating capital.
So you would say to someone that, when they hire their first person, they want a 90-day cash flow, which I think is...
I would say they need to have by the time they hire their first people, they need to have a year's worth of cash reserves to pay themselves, because they're the only employee.
Right.
So let's do the math. If I want to make $100,000 a year, I don't hire anybody until I have $100,000 of savings in the account.
Right. And how do you handle that when it's like, well, I want to scale right now, and I want to use that $100,000 or $50,000 of it? Do you just
because I'm going to say you don't even know what scale is. You don't know what it is. You can't scale if you haven't scaled yourself. And if you're scaling, the most efficient and effective scaling is scaling what you're doing until you master it and you can demonstrate what the result of that is. And if it's got the cash derivative of making money, then you put a year's worth of income away, because now you're going to follow the rule of 3, which is you take the one thing you do, you hire 2 more people and you start working with them to replicate it, to do it 3 times over. Because if you can't master that, there's no such thing as scale or scaling. People don't even know what they're talking about. I want to grow so fast. Well, what kind of growth? Let me give you the analogy. Am I going to build a 2-story house and then I get to the 2nd story and I'm like, you know what? Let's throw another 5 stories on.
Yeah.
Someone would say you're an idiot because it's going to collapse. And the people that do try to do it, I just go one more. I just add one more. They collapse. So if you don't know what scale is, which is maximizing what you have, you can't go to scaling, which is amplifying and magnifying what you know already is proven to work at the highest, most impactful and efficient point in time. So the first discipline is you need to do it yourself until you master what you're doing. And then you put up a year's worth of reserves. Now, when you hire 2 people, that year's worth of reserves is now only going to be 6 months worth of reserves, because you got 3 mouths to feed instead of 1. Now you have to rebuild back to a year's worth of reserves. Now, why am I telling business owners to do this? Because it instills discipline. They can't outscale. See, you'll have plenty of time to go big when you get the fundamentals right. But if we know that the 3 chief complaints of why businesses go out of business is they don't have any funding, they don't have any demand, and they don't have great people, it's because they don't actually know how to scale. They don't know how to scale what they're doing. They don't know how to scale themselves and doing it more efficiently. They don't know how to hire and scale the people to master or to mimic and master what they're doing, to model, mimic, and master. So all these rules of 3 that I have very specific rules. And if you follow those rules, which I follow, then you won't get in trouble. If you deviate from the rules, you will get in trouble. And the statistics show that 100%.
What's the biggest, you talk the 0 to 3 is, it's its own sort of laneway. And then from 3 to 10, things change, right? That's where you start to get a lot more people operationally inside the business, a lot more moving parts. What's the biggest obstacles you see when moving from that 3 to 10 transition?
It's the luck of the draw. If you happen to hire people who figure it out on their own and complement your business,
right,
then you get this mild sense of security, because all of a sudden it's not just you anymore. You've got people doing it. Oh my gosh, I've got a real business now. And then it just collapses under its own weight, because you don't actually know how to build those people. You don't know, you don't have the financial resources in place if there's a misstep. So you shoot all your capacity with the few people you hire. And if they don't figure it out and they're not aligned and they're not pressing into it and it doesn't work, now you've gone through all your money, you've gone through your family's money. If the bank gave you money, it's gone. And now you have to figure it out by yourself, which is why you stay small, because you can't dig out of that hole. Which is why you go bankrupt. And then your confidence, your family's confidence, everybody's confidence says this person doesn't have a clue what they're doing, so no one's going to support you. And now the grind is much harder, because now you got to go a long ways. Test the math. Why do 25 million businesses have 1 employee, which is the founder? Because they don't have the confidence that they can do it. So they're living off of everything they're making. And when they make more, they spend it. And all of a sudden they trap themselves because they have no resources. They have 0 confidence they can do more. They may have the desire, but they don't have the discipline. They don't have the structure. They don't have the strategy. And so what do? They get trapped.
How does someone get that confidence? Is there some questions you can ask yourself? Is there some real long, hard look in the mirror? What in your view, what is going to help someone generate that confidence in order to take that next step?
If you follow the 3M rule, like everyone overcomplicates everything, and it's because they're moving away from something. If you're moving away from something, then you're moving away from what you don't want in your life. And now all of a sudden you have to create what you do want. And when you can't do that, now instead of acknowledging you were the problem where you left, you blame whatever you stepped into as the reason it didn't work. It's always about not acceptance and personal accountability. That's number 1. So I'm just asking your question again. I just lost my train of thought.
That's all right, mate. I love it. That you were talking about the 3 M's. So for confidence, how does someone find that confidence?
Look, if I want to if I want to have a business that pays me $1 million a year, don't I need to find somebody that's doing something I'm remotely interested in that makes $1 million a year? So wouldn't that force me to actually go ask questions of people and learn to network and ask, hey, if I want to start a business that makes $1 million a year I don't really care what it does, as long as it's not something that I definitely don't want to do. Does anybody have any ideas or opinions? So the quality of your questions will always determine the quality of your outcomes. Then through asking those questions, someone says, yeah, I know this guy and he does this over here. And I think he's got like a $2 or $3 million business. Great. Now I go reach out to that person, forcing me to reach out and call somebody and ask a question, which is, hey, I'm kind of interested in the business you're in. I would never do anything that would be competitive. I don't even know that I really want to do what you do, but I was wondering if I could schedule a half hour if I bought you lunch to kind of just pick your brain because I'm trying to make a career decision. Imagine taking 20 of those appointments and people are like, yeah, but I don't know who to go to. Of course you don't. Just like you won't know who to go to when you start your business because you haven't learned the skills to network. You haven't learned the skills to ask good questions. You haven't learned the skills to make yourself uncomfortable and demonstrate that you don't know what you're talking about. Therefore, you're willing to go find people. But once you hone in on something following that process, now it's so simple. Model, mimic, master. When you've tapped out what that person's done, go to the next level. Model, mimic, master. When you learn those skill sets, then you can transfer that same skill set to your first and second employee. I've got a kid that's a social media guy, probably doing what you're doing. He started his own company last year in June. He did $5,000 for the first half of last year. That's what he was doing a month. Sorry, $5,000 a month. So I said, here's the deal. Model, mimic, master. I'm going to teach you exactly how to grow and scale your business. Last month, he did $250,000. He's got $450,000 in cash in the bank. And he asked me permission to hire his first employee. That's how thorough he's following the model, mimic, master and doing exactly what I taught him to do and doing it exactly the way I taught him. And he's got a business this year that's going to do probably $3.5 to $4 million in revenue from what he did last year, which was $60,000.
Mate, love it. Model, mimic, master. It's you're so right, and the conversation can never be had enough around people just need to simplify the way in which they're looking at something. And you know, I mean,
you know how I got that? This is what's important. This is important to mentors. Hector Lamarck, for 21 years, has been a personal friend, personal mentor to me. And he's a best friend, inner circle best friend. He has one of the largest Primerica financial services distribution group in the United States. He is the most remarkable human being I know. And he told me 21 years ago, that's the basis for which I started Audigy. Don't try to be so many things that nobody can understand. If you want to do something big, create a system that others can model, mimic, and then master the highest impact. I took those 3 M's and it's all I drove to. Whatever I learned to do, I taught it to somebody else. And I taught them how to teach it to somebody else. And then what happens when you fast forward to 2016, I had 250 business owners with 4,000 employees, and everyone was doing that across the spectrum, which is why our businesses outperform the industry 3.5 to 15 times on average, because everyone modeled, mimicked, and mastered what we were doing.
Mate, I absolutely love that. And look, we've come up to full time here. So, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure once again having you on here. It's always a awesome conversation, a masterclass. You are certainly a man of many talents, and mate, appreciate what you're doing out there, and definitely all the support you're providing for, you know, all your students, and also all the free content that you put out there as well. Mate, there's
I would just suggest everybody watching this, go to cardoneventures.com/emergency, download my book, because the first half is why you got in trouble, the kind of thinking and doing you need to have. The second half is what to do if you are in trouble. So you can just skip to the second half if you're in trouble. And if you want to then understand why you got there, you can go backwards. Or if you're not wanting to get in trouble, read the first half first. And that's my gift to anybody who needs help.
Awesome. We'll link that up to the show as well, so you can find that in your wherever you're listening to this on your phone, or you can head over to the website, link that up, and head over and get it. Definitely recommend checking it out, mate. Thank you once again.
It's great talking to you again.
Cool. Pleasure, man. That was great. Good stuff.
Awesome.
Always fun. when the borders open, I've got to get my way over there. I'm telling you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We'd like to come back there, but
yeah, we've
who
got
knows when we're all going to get to do that.
It's pretty crazy over here at the moment. The Victoria, so
I know I've been following it. It's crazy. They're going the other direction.
Yeah.
At some point, I don't know what the death rate there is, but over here, half of it's bullshit because they're incentivizing with cash incentives for everyone to miscount and misdiagnose because they're trying to persuade an electoral cycle versus just being honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like you look at the numbers over here, I can't quote them off the top of my head, but even in Queensland, right, which is one of our states over here, there's been 6 deaths in 1,000 cases, yet we've gone on extreme lockdown. I mean, no disrespect to the 6 people who have passed away. Now, there are more people in Victoria. However, when you look at the numbers compared to flu and a number of other, things out there that are causing these deaths, it seems like there was an over panic at the start, which, I mean, you have to respect that they have to make these decisions, but it's also okay to go, maybe we overreacted a little bit based off that, and we can be a little bit more mindful, because what the government don't understand, and I wish we should have talked about this, I'd love to get your thoughts on it, is the impact that it's having at an economic level and what that will end up doing to mental health, physical health of populations.
If you're depending on what side of the government you're on here in the United States, that's exactly what you want. You want people to be dependent on you. You want to have programs that give things to people and pay them more to stay home than get and go to work, because it makes them become codependent. And if you want voters, then you give them stuff so they're codependent versus how dare them think they can go get that stuff themselves. And so you advocate codependency versus independence. And the more people we can get to be codependent on the government, the more the government gets to be in control. It's just a philosophical thing. It's a strategic thing. And so now it's like, okay, the economy was scorching here. Like Obama had said before Trump was put in office, there's no magic wand to making the economy good. And then it was exploding. So now it's everything you can to claw it back. And I'm not advocating, I don't think, I think Trump should put his phone down and speak only when someone's well-trained him. So I'm not advocating that over the other stuff, but I'm saying that it's just a philosophical difference. Like I believe in the ability to self-create, and then I take care of the people that are creating with me. And that's what capitalism is. The Democrats prefer that, you're on universal health care and your college is paid for and your cell phones are free, just making you more and more pregnant along the way so you can't exercise independence. And I think it's a philosophical thing, and it's been around forever. It's just that, you can see it play out with all the games that are going on.
It's blowing up. The media it's just turned into an absolute shitstorm, hasn't it? It's scary to see, all the censorship that's happening with, specific. Now, again, I feel for me, I don't know what's true anymore, right? It's like, what do you actually believe? Like, what statistic do you believe? Who do you believe? All
I know is that look, I'm not advocating one way or another, but I know that when the mayor of New York paints Black Lives Matters in front of Donald Trump's building, and Donald Trump does not live there anymore. The people of New York live there. And then people go in front of a abortion clinic and write Black Babies Matters, and they arrest them and they throw them in jail. You got a problem. Like, either it's okay for everyone to go devastate and write whatever they want on the streets, or it's not. Freedom of speech is either good for everyone or it's not. It's just that when you start picking and choosing who gets to have freedom of speech, in Seattle, you got people that pay their taxes. They've spent their hard-earned money to buy a place downtown, and they're scared to death to walk out of their building because they will not do anything to enforce the law. But if one of those people breaks the law, they'll arrest them. It's like,
how does that even happen?
Shows you it just goes to show you how out of control it is. It's just, it's when the deeds of good people get punished and the deeds of poor performing people get promoted as you're entitled to it, you know that your leadership is not there's no leadership.
Yeah. Like with that Black Lives Matter painted on the street, I heard that he admitted just recently that they didn't even have a permit for it. They didn't actually get a permit. He allowed it without a permit. And then there was
if someone would have gone and wrote Trump 2020, or if they would have wrote All Lives Matter, or if they would have said white. Can you imagine somebody writing White Lives Matter?
Well, there was a lady. There was that lady, the black lady who painted over it. Right, she went with black paint.
And they threw her in jail.
And they threw her in jail. She was painting over it. It's like, fuck. How is that even?
The whole thing is a distorted fabrication and manipulation in the truth, and it's not healthy for anybody. And the really sad part is the people that have legitimate concerns about legitimate issues are getting overshadowed by the illegitimate manipulation and agendas of other people.
Yeah.
You know, there's been a ton. I agree that people that have been treated unfair, women, people of color, you know, anybody that's being treated unfairly has the right to speak up, and they should be heard and they should be supported for the way they feel. But when that turns to violence and turns to theft, and then they're defended for doing that, and unfortunately, all these things that got overshadowed by a small percentage of people that are stealing and abusing and hurting, the whole valid message point goes away, and then it undermines the actual validity of the pain and suffering that people have gone through.
How do you see it playing out in November? Because obviously, you know, 3 months away, it's going to be a crazy 3 months.
I don't know, dude. There's so much pressure right now to cause chaos and destruction in the economy and the confidence of people, and so much. You know, nobody's working together. They both dug in on both sides. I think there was obviously the facts have come out now that the Obama White House spied on the Trump campaign. It's just unbelievable. And
they're not talking about that very much.
The amount of evidence that's there, and it's almost like, oh well, so what? You know, we got new things to worry about. I think coronavirus is this. All this conversation about all this is just to mask the news-worthy information that people should be caring about, should be focused, our civil liberties being completely and entirely destroyed by a group of people that are not being held accountable. But yet if you spit on the sidewalk, or you do one thing wrong, or you try to open your business and they come and arrest you, but yet they're letting the people busting the windows and stealing shit. They're not even doing anything about those people. So the whole thing is just absurd. Like a huge, and it's going to get dangerous pretty soon. Yeah, if the government doesn't step up and do the right thing. Because
if he gets reelected, I mean, you could only imagine the carnage that they've already been getting away with. That the
scary part is the uncertainty, but that's part of the manipulation, right?
Absolutely.
Where there's fear, there's uncertainty. Where there's uncertainty, there's opportunity. So we definitely have seen the Democrats do everything they can illegally try to remove Trump from office. So that didn't work. So now they've resorted to supporting all this other shit in the hopes that maybe that'll get them thrown out. They're desperate. Desperate times create desperate results.
I just hope that the sanity of the normal human beings out there will be able to see this for what it is. Right. Like,
you know, there was a day where if someone walked around with a hat on that said Obama, they were proud of it. And people like me that maybe I didn't care much for Obama, although I think, you know, I give him a lot of kudos for being an example of how to become something so significant.
Yeah.
And I think that example for all human beings needs to be made. So politics aside, you cannot take away somebody's success. And that should be celebrated, right? But today, if you have a Trump hat on, people are actually okay with someone beating you in the streets. Yeah. And it's just, you know, where what happened to the First Amendment? What happened to this being America? And, you know, good, bad, or indifferent. No, Will's sitting in here. He and I don't see eye to eye with politics, but I trust the dude. I love the dude. And I know he has my back. Who gives a shit if we don't see eye to eye in politics? But as human beings, we're supporting each other, and no one's going to do anything to Will that I won't jump in and kick their ass if they try to.
Yeah.
So, and he'd do the same for me. So, you know, when that's lost, then there's just, it's ripe for bad things to happen. And I think the current administration hasn't done enough to try to bridge that. I think the opposing team has done everything they could to undermine it as well. And I think all those politicians, Republicans and Democrats that are lifetime politicians, and the federal guys, I think they all have a lot of shit to hide that they've been able to get away with that they don't want an outsider to come in and expose. So I think fundamentally everybody would prefer to see a lifer get put back into the place where they all know what they're going to be dealing with versus the unknown.
It's true. You know, you don't become a multi-millionaire by just getting your wage from Parliament.
Exactly. I mean, look at how much wealth Biden's, his kids were taking money from China and taking money from everywhere. And it's like,
$1 million board placement.
Ukraine. And come on, the kid was a coke addict dipshit. Like,
exactly.
How stupid do you have to be to actually think, oh, he's providing a lot of value?
And
that makes sense.
How's Nancy Pelosi generated $150 million worth of wealth? Where the fuck does that come from? Like, there's different.
And if you go into where she's responsible, there's more tents and homeless people than in other places. You don't give a shit about those people. It's just sad. It's a sad place we're in as a country. And unfortunately,
it is, because the whole world's watching. That's the other thing as well. It's like, fuck, if it's happening over there, you can only imagine. If you're China and
you're Russia right now, you're really feeling like whatever. Like, China did a great job of equalizing our economies, intentional or not intentional. Russia, there's no heat on Russia. They're doing whatever they want to do because we're so distracted. They're loving it. Like anything that we could accuse any other country of doing to the United States, our government has been doing it to himself now in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And it's lowered everybody's confidence in everyone. It's just, it means now we're exposed to external sources.
Yeah.
So,
and this comes back again to that uncertainty, right? It's just so uncertain.
That's why I'm going to do the one thing that's certain. I'm going to help as many business owners right now. I'm making a land grab for as many people, as many business owners, anyone that will start a relationship, start a dialogue, start working with me, because everyone else is so distracted with bullshit. That's the first thing I did is I bought 10, 12 cameras. I set up 3 or 4 studios. Every call I'm on is being broadcasted. Every coaching session is being chopped up and pieces pushed out. Like, our team has gone into overdrive, and all you have to do is look at my Instagram, and you can see, like, it looks like we're fucking going everywhere and doing everything.
Yeah.
One day I'm in Miami, next day I'm in Arizona, next day I'm in Dallas, next day I'm in Portland. People here, people there, little clips there or there. Like, I went crazy on the infrastructure. Fast forward or rewind a year ago, it's just Will and I sitting in the studio.
Yeah. And mate, kudos, because that's what people should be focusing on as well. And it's
massive action. I learned that from my business partner.
Yep. Yeah, that's one major thing that he is a major advocate on. Just take massive action in the face of uncertainty. Be certain, and mate, we'll get through it. That's the main thing.
Well,
so, mate,
I look
appreciate
forward to
it.
our next chat, buddy.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.